Yes, good evening. Hello, welcome, and welcome to Further Together, enriching relationships, creating a better future, baby.
That's right. Thank you guys for joining us tonight on yet another episode of Enriching Relationships. It's all about making our relationships better. Like we always say that even a good marriage can be better.
Yeah. And that's the reason why we are ever bringing new faces on Further Together. And without you, we cannot further together. So every week we try to bring a new face or bring a new topic to enrich your relationship. We always say, can two walk together
Together
unless
unless they
they?
agree. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Two can't work together unless they agree. And this is one thing that we do on a weekly basis as part of our investing into our marriage. We invite different people on this platform with the hope that they will inspire and enrich our marriage. And ever since we've started, not only have we been impacted in a positive way, but we have also received a lot of feedback from you guys of how your marriages are being transformed. We have pictures, we have videos of how marriages are being enriched.
Definitely, we're gonna have an episode of bringing those things, bringing those videos, those pictures, and feedbacks. If you're just joining us, please show us by the
Raise of hand.
comments, the raising your hands, and the likes and the loves. Tonight is a precious night. We have one man whom I value so much for one reason, that the topic he brings and what he normally speak about is something that people do not normally want to go outside and speak about. They want to do it in silent. And Malcolm, he's a legend. He's one person who just came out and say, guys, you know what? I've been in this kind of a situation, but I've come out clean. These are the lessons that I've learned. And it's more important to learn from people like him because they've been there, they have done that. And when they are talking about things, they are talking about things that they do know. He's not a theoretical guy. He's a very practical man.
Yep. One of the episodes that I loved about him, he was talking of how men sometimes get reluctant and they don't. Once they've got the woman and they stop pursuing the woman, they stop doing the things that they used to do in order to get the attention from the wife. And then a lot of the times we are wondering, why are these marriages dying? Probably you've stopped doing what you used to do before. So one thing that I like is when he can be so practical and share his own experience with other people. I think it can impact many relationships in a profound way.
Men always say when you go to the fish, to fish, when you go to the dam to fish, you use a worm. But once you catch the fish, what's the point of giving the fish the worm? You have got it already.
You've got it.
Yeah. So we buy flowers, we do those remembering birthdays and all this stuff. But once we are together in the house, then familiarity kicks in. We don't need to do that. Who is there? Please share if you care. Tonight is going to be a different night. We have brother Malcohm Timm in the house, and he's going to give some nuggets which are quite powerful for relationships. So if you are just joining us, please tell a friend to tell a friend that Further Together is right on air, and Malcolm is right in, and he's just in the studios.
That's right, guys. Let's share the platform. Let other people also come and join in and be blessed by this live broadcast. As we've rightly mentioned earlier, tonight we are discussing about why marriages fail. And we know it's quite a broad topic, which we cannot exhaust in a day. But Malcolm will give us his own side of the story, his own experience of what he thinks makes marriages fail, or he will just give us his own experience. And I believe that by that we can learn, and there's so many things that we can do differently in our own marriages to avoid going down the same path. It will be a life, we say that it's a great experience to go through divorce. We know that there is pain that is attached to it. There's a lot of scars that may remain after someone has divorced, some of which may be difficult to erase. So this is why it is good to learn, especially from people that have gone ahead of us and people that have experienced it. So do share with friends and share with the family, and as we bring him on.
Yes, here is a gentleman whom I've known for more than 15, 20 years. I've known Malcolm for a long time.
Wow.
You know, we used to just bump into each other in the city of Harare. Then later on, I moved here, but we were in touch on Facebook, and glad to see him again on his feet after he has gone through challenges in marriage, and he came out, boom, and said, gentlemen, this is how we do it. And Malcolm is a relationship coach. So if you are looking for somebody who can support you in the areas of relationship, here is one guy who have been in it, and he is walking the talk. Shall we bring him now? Sir Malcolm, you are welcome.
Hi, Pastor Kuti. How are you?
It's good to see you. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. It's good to see you too.
Yes. How is Harare?
All right, it's good. It's starting to heat up here, which is good for us because it's been cold for some time. So it's good to see the sun out again and starting to feel the sun is really awesome.
Yes. We have brought you tonight on the topic of why marriages fail. And before we delve into the topic, some people might want to know your background.
Yeah, sure. Sure, fantastic. Okay, so let me jump into it. I suppose with the relevance to this show specifically, I think one of the questions I get asked a lot is how all of this actually started for me, because I wasn't really a video kind of person, or a person who would put out content on relationships. I remember telling a friend of mine, I don't really want to be known as the relationship guy per se, but I think all of this really started for me when I'd gone through some really difficult times in my previous marriage, and I had been trying my best to speak to people, to find information on the internet that would help me fight for my marriage, that would help me fight for my love and help me fight for my relationship, and just finding out how little information there was out there that would actually help me fight for my marriage successfully, because so much of the approach to marriages is these days, if you're not happy, then all you need to do is just jump out of it. And that's not how we grew up. We came from a period of time where people fought for their marriages. They stayed in it. They gave it a great deal of effort, and they wanted it to work. And so, yeah, it's trying to find that again. And a lot of today's approach to marriage doesn't support that belief. And so, yeah, in the time that I was going through it, going through my hardships in my marriage, going through my separation, going through a divorce, I don't know, like I'm saying, the information just wasn't out there. And I remember thinking in that specific time that if I can make it through this, I really want to be able to, with all of the experience that I've gathered, to be able to share it with people who are going through the same experiences, to help give them good information, which is the thing which I feel like is missing. There's not a lot of good information out there. You're going through articles and videos on the internet, and a lot of the stuff that's packaged really well isn't packaged also for couples who have our kind of traditional beliefs. So it's packaged very much for secular kinds of marriages. And so, you know, when you're going through difficult times, a lot of people are just trying to find any information to do two things: to keep them sane, but then to help them try, like I said earlier on, to make their relationship work. So you're dealing with a lot when you're going through, like I said, either separation or divorce, or you're feeling the challenge of marriage. And so this is how this all started for me. And primarily, I think a lot of the responses that I've gotten is because I'm a guy who's talking about it. And there's not a lot of guys out there with a lot of the perspective that I talk about with marriages and in how to manage dealing with your wife, how to manage dealing with your children, how to manage your own self and your own perceptions of marriage as a man. And
Mhm.
so just as a lot of people started coming across this content, yeah, I suppose the feedback just kind of fueled more videos, and it got me to look deeper into some other aspects of marriage and marriage relationships that haven't previously been talked about. And so initially I started writing, and I went from writing to putting out videos, which is what I'm doing now. And that's, yeah, and I suppose that's how I came to start putting out content on marriages and helping couples. I think that's really my drive. My drive is to be somebody who's there to help people in the fight for their marriage, and that's why a lot of the calls that I get the messages that I get is because in those periods of time, and in my own personal experience as well, there isn't a lot of people who will stay with you the distance in fighting for your marriage.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
really wanted, I had the motivation at the drive at the time to be there to help people fight for their marriage. And most oftentimes I'll tell people, look, I'm not a pastor. I'm just somebody who loves you. I love you and I want your marriage to work. And so I'll speak with the husband, I'll speak with the wife, and just help people, like I said, in the fight for their marriage.
Mm.
A lot of people might want to know that obviously you're talking about fighting for your marriage. Do you, in your own capacity, feel that you did the best that you could in your former marriage?
I think I started doing the best that I could when I realized things were falling apart, which I can appreciate now might, well, it was definitely the wrong time to do it. And I think, by the time that people are finding me and trying to get me
Mm.
to intervene, help them in their marriage, is really late. Is really late. We
Mm.
really, like the exercise or the discipline of the activity of fighting for your marriage um, is daily. It's not like a lot of people do, or like I did as well, where I started coming around to it when it was really, really bad.
Mm.
And because I realized in that period of time that I should have really been fighting for my marriage so much earlier than that. And I suppose that's really when I started committing to it. And like I said, I started learning. And despite everything that I tried to do in the time that I tried to do it, I think it was really far gone, and the intervention needed to be really, really deep. But yeah, I think in my particular instance, it was quite late, and that's what I try to keep people from arriving at. Don't fight for your marriage when it's already so late. I mean, the work of fighting for your marriage now I appreciate is daily. It's in the things that you say to each other daily, the activities that you make a habit daily, because that's when the fight for your marriage is on. And it's not when the house is burning. You want to prevent the house from burning. You want to
Yeah.
become
Yeah.
expert
Yeah.
at putting house fires, and
Mm.
so that's trying to get people to that mentality. And yeah, but like I said, most oftentimes when people are getting hold of me, it's because it's really, really late now, and they really need some hectic intervention.
Yes, you always, or most of the times, you speak about men going out to play with their boys and being reluctant in marriage. Can you take us through that talk on how best can we, do away from familiarity?
Yeah, sure. I think even as you say that there's so much that goes into it. There's so much to consider in talking about guys and hanging out with the boys, for the reason, or for these reasons. Primarily, one is for guys, it's a habit. So they'll do this a lot more before they get married. They hang out with the boys, and it becomes a routine. So they know I do this all the time. And there's nothing wrong with it per se up until you get married. And when you get married, one of the things that can happen if you're not careful is you get into the space where you can get your partner to feel unappreciated and unwanted, because most oftentimes when guys are fighting for that time, they're not agreeing with their wives about the time that they're spending with other people. So it becomes very much, hey, listen, uh, this is the time that I have with the boys. I'm going to go out, I'm going to hang with the boys, and that's that. but she may want to do something on that specific night. She might want to spend time with you. Maybe, you know, just being around. She wants to know that she's that important to you. And it's not that you shouldn't hang with the boys, but hanging with the boys shouldn't be the priority. I think that's the first thing is it has made wives feel like, hey, this guy doesn't appreciate me. He when he married me, he told me I was the most important thing. But now that we're married, I'm realizing, no, the boys are actually more important than the things that I want. If I want to spend time with him, I don't win in this department. His boys win, so I'm obviously not the most important thing. So that's the first thing that can happen in that regard. And I think also the second thing, which is one of the things I also highlighted in one video that I did, is that when that becomes so much of a habit, what ends up happening in the time that you spend with the boys is that you start sharing with them, or you continue to share with them all the things that are important to you and that matter to you in your life. So if you've achieved a success, you celebrate it with them. If you're going through a really difficult time, you go through a difficult time with the boys. And the whole time you're excluding your partner, you're excluding your wife from all of those celebrations, from all of those disappointments and all of the hurts that you're going through and the struggles that you're going through. And what ends up happening over a long period of time is that you start to create a divide, and the relationship that you've had with your wife has only been romantic, but it hasn't been allowed to grow because you're not sharing the things that matter in your life with your wife. So she's not celebrating with you your achievements. She's not going through your difficult times with you because you're doing all of that with the boys. And what ends up happening in those kind of situations is that, yeah, you'll have a wife who doesn't really know her husband, and then a husband who doesn't really know his wife because they're not going through stuff together. He's spending all of those moments outside of the home and outside of the marriage. So yeah, hanging with the boys or hanging outside of home can become dangerous when it interferes with those two things, that your wife is feeling respected, loved, and appreciated and wanted, and the aspect of sharing all of the most important parts of your life outside of your marriage, which should matter the most. Your wife should be the first person to know. Your wife should be celebrating with you. Your wife should be going through difficult times with you, because that's how you get to know each other. What this person is like when they're having a hard time, what they're like when they're having a really great time. And so your boys should be getting, you know, they shouldn't be getting they should just be getting the headlines, not the details. It should be the other way around. Your wife should be what should.
That's profound. A message to the guys out there. Let's not do it at the expense of the women. Our women should come first. That's the message. That's
I also think that it's
vice
yes,
versa.
vice versa.
Vice
It
versa.
can be.
Yeah, it is vice versa. Can we go straight into your experience? From your own experience, why do you think marriages fail? I know you've mentioned the issue of starting out late, that sometimes we wait until it's late before we seek the help that's required. Apart from that, why do you think marriages are failing from your own experience?
You know, let me tell you this. I'll give you two sets of experiences. I'll combine them in some way. But there's my own personal experience, and in what I went through in my previous marriage, and then there's the experience of all. I suppose it's over about 150 couples now that I've been working with over the last year and a half or so. Some of the experiences that they've gone through, and I think this is a thing that I am. You know, I've been trying to drive across a lot more, but primarily to couples who are thinking about getting married or who have just gotten married. This is so important. One of the things that I feel is it's not that people have a really great marriage and then it starts failing. In a lot of instances, it's failing while it's even beginning. And let me explain that. It's because as people come into these long-term relationships, but primarily marriage, as people coming into marriage, people can be, I don't know if the word is tricked, but people can be tricked by the romance of the experience. It's very romantic. It's exciting. It's passionate. And so what happens in
Firework.
the beginning, everyone is putting their best foot forward. Everyone. A person is 100% loyal. A person is 100% engaged. A person is 100% committed. They listen. You don't have to teach people how to listen who are dating, because it's what they do. They listen. You don't have to teach somebody to be romantic when they're dating. Nobody says, oh, in our dating experience, dating is falling apart. No, because everybody's putting their best foot forward. They're bringing flowers, doing movies, they're spending time, they're putting aside work commitments so they can spend time with each other. The guys are not hanging with the boys, the girl is not hanging with the girls, they're hanging with each other. So everybody's doing the right thing when it's dating. But when we're getting married now, what happens is that the most serious aspects of the relationship are not being addressed because everybody's giving to the romance of it. And so what ends up happening over a period of time is, and what I've come to find, is that people don't know what to do when the feelings are no longer there. Because in each part, people haven't been honest about their expectations. And this is some quick examples. It's like, even if people are going through premarital counseling, here's what will happen most often times. People will say, oh, you'll sit there with your premarital counselor and they'll say, how important is sex to you guys? And my wife will say, oh, sex is so important. So important, we must always have it. And a guy will say, yeah, sex is primary, we must have sex. And even in saying that, later on, we realized that they weren't even talking about the same thing. Because the guy in his mind, he's got aspects of sex, like oral sex in mind. When she's talking about sex, she's not talking about oral sex. But it's critical to her. It's critical to the woman that she doesn't do it, but it's critical to the man that that happens. So they're both talking about sex, but they're not talking about the same kinds of sex. For example, another thing might be cooking, just as arbitrary examples. A woman say, oh, yes, I definitely cook, but she cooks occasionally. Or her menu isn't broad, it's not a broad menu. So she says, but in his brain, he's thinking, I never have to go out looking for anything because my wife can do all of this, but she doesn't. They don't talk about it because romance is so high right now. And so what ends up happening, those critical issues are not addressed. They start to form little cracks in the relationship. Seems like a little compromise. It looks like the guy, it doesn't really matter to him that oral sex is not happening, but over a period of time, these little cracks start to grow because it was never addressed, it was never settled. So that's one of the ways that things can fail, is that people are not being open and honest with each other, even at premarital counseling stage. You need to be very clear about what your expectations were, because I'll tell you, I don't know if you can see, let me use my hand here. Like, this is where people's expectations are usually when they're going into it. And a lot of times in marriage, this is the reality. So the expectations are up here, the reality down here, and the difference between the two, like up here and down here, that gap is called disappointment. Because what's actually happened is that people have set specific expectations. Those expectations haven't been met over a long period of time. It's, when a person is deciding to end a marriage or deciding to end a relationship, what they're doing is, it's a cumulative collection, if you will, of all of these little cracks. I've been telling you that oral sex is important to me. I've been telling you that this thing is important to me. I've been telling all these little cracks over all the years. They end up forming a huge vacuum in a person's life, and then they can make those kind of decisions about ending a marriage because those expectations haven't been met. I think that's one of the reasons. I'm going to try and run through some other ones quickly. Another reason is that people also grow apart. It's a reality. And if you're not able to adjust to the growing apart, or to grow together in the same direction, that's another thing that can make a marriage fall apart. I'll give you an example. When the two people, they came together, both of them were out of high school, nobody had a college degree, and they got together, they were madly in love and whatever. And what ends up happening? The woman, she decides, hey, listen, I want to do something better with my life. She starts learning. So she goes at it, she gets her undergraduate degree. She's excited by that success. She's got an undergraduate degree now. Now she wants to get a master's. She gets a master's. And all the time that she's getting better qualifications, she's getting a better position in a company where she's working, or she's getting a better job. That better job is bringing in more money. And then her expectations start changing as well. She didn't mind public transport initially, but now that she's got this better job, she's got a company car. She doesn't like this company car. She wants the company car. They were staying in a flat someplace or in a cottage someplace, but she wants more. she's expecting children, or she has children. She wants more for those children. Now she wants a house. That she can afford a deposit on a house right now because she's got a better job. But all the while that she's doing this, her husband isn't growing. He's not getting vacations. He's not getting a better job. He's earning much less than she is right now. But the reality is that they're growing. And even as this woman, and I've seen this, a woman as she starts climbing a specific ladder, she gets approached by a different group of guys altogether. She had only known the one guy, her husband, who she married. That's but she's encountering guys. The size of these guys' dreams is incredible. The kind of money that these guys earn, the kind of things that they can do, it's incredible. And so, in an ideal world, we don't want those things to affect the woman's thinking. We say, no, 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 you should be loyal to your husband. You should only think about your husband. But the reality on the ground is these other groups of guys make her feel more excited. They make her feel like she can do more and she can achieve more. And it's those feelings that are happening in a person's brain that can alter what they want for the rest of their life. Think, hey, listen, the way this is going, my husband is not growing. I don't want to continue to be with somebody who's not growing at the same pace I am. And then they can end a relationship that way. I've used a woman as an example, but it can happen with guys as well. On the flip side of it, so that's another reason. I think, and a third reason would be that, and again, in some of the experiences that I've had, is that people, when they're getting married, in large part, do not know who they are. They have no idea who they are. They have no idea what they like. They don't know what they like in the partner. They don't know what they like in their career. They don't know what they like as an individual, because a lot of people grow up in very sheltered existences. So you grow up in a family where your parents are guiding the things that you like and the things that you dislike. Society guiding the things that you like and you dislike. And so you grow up like that, and then you marry somebody, but you haven't really figured out who you are. And so in your marriage experience, you come to realize, hey, you know what? I actually don't like eating those kinds of food. I don't like watching those kind of movies. I don't like listening to that kind of music. In actual fact, I'm not even this kind of person. But somebody, when they married you, they married who they thought you were, and they married who you thought you were. And so now they're stuck in a situation where you're making all of these drastic changes to your life. They don't know who you are anymore. You're beginning to discover who you are, and the person you realize that you are doesn't want this marriage or doesn't want this person.
Yeah.
If you had known who you were, you wouldn't have picked that person.
Yeah.
But stuck in the situation that we're stuck in, and whether there's children or there's no children, that's the reality on the ground. And what a person, most oftentimes people, what they cannot live with is not being true to themselves. I can't. I know that I don't like you. I know that I wouldn't have chosen you if I had an option, and that's what makes it difficult to stay, because I wouldn't have if I had known that's who I was. So I think maybe very quickly, those are three very significant reasons why. Um, I think another fourth one, this one also can't be ignored, is just the reason that, wherever there's been some kind of breach of trust, it's very hard. It's very, very hard, because it's the breach of trust is something that you don't only fight once, you fight it over and over and over again. If it's a trust of money, every time your partner who can't be trusted has money, you're fighting that battle again. Every time your partner who can't be trusted with members of the opposite sex, or another woman or another man, you're fighting that battle again, and you keep fighting it, and over a period of time it becomes hard for people to manage. And if people can't grow beyond that, there's no way a relationship can sustain past that. So I mean, those are real reasons why people are breaking up every day, every day.
Mm. Wow. If you are just joining us, we have Malcohm Timm, who is a relationship coach based in Zimbabwe. And he's sharing with us, some of the reasons why marriages do fail, because today we are discussing why marriages fail. And Malcohm has been there, and he once went through a divorce, and he is back fully loaded. Not only did he just went through the path, but there are lessons, there are things, nuggets that he picked up as he was coming back to I would say coming back to life, so to speak. And one of the things which Malcolm mentioned is the issue of growing apart. To be fair, it's a big issue. I saw my brother Mchada Vunzawabaya saying it's one of the biggest issues in the diaspora, in the UK in particular, that most ladies who came here, they developed themselves, they became social workers, they became nurses. Some now attain higher positions in workplaces, whereas men were concentrating on hunting, and they remained, or should I include myself, and we remained on our low profile jobs. So the friction started, and then the divorce rate skyrocketed, because there was no development on one hand, was the other one was developing. So these are real issues. If you're watching right now and you have a question or you have a contribution, please send it in. We have Malcohm with us tonight, and we're going to go deeper. Malcohm, they say divorce is it's not a one-off event. It's not an event. It's an ongoing process. How did you manage to go through that whole process? Because when people are looking at it, they just think, okay, I'm fed up, then I'll just divorce him, bang, it's over. Especially in a situation like your one where there are children. How did it all happen, and how did you manage?
Let me say this about like divorce. It's so true, because most oftentimes different you can go through different groups, whether they're online, whether they're Christian or they're secular, that help you deal with the experience of divorce. But I think the thing that I found in common with all of them is that people will share the experience of a real grieving process. It's like a real death, in a sense. It's like you have to have been married to appreciate it, because a lot of people think, oh, you know what, I had a girlfriend in college, we went out for 3 years and we broke up, it didn't do anything to me. That is not what divorce is like. Divorce is not like that at all. I mean, it's if we take what the Bible is saying and the experience of two individuals who came from their own separate and different backgrounds, and they've gone through the process of becoming one person, the divorce experience after that is the separation of those two people. And how it's been described in a way that I think makes perfect sense is, if you take two sheets of paper, you glue them together, and you wait for it to, and then you try to separate those two sheets. There's a lot of tearing involved. There's tearing, there's damage that happens, and you have two pieces of paper that are completely damaged. Now here's the experience with divorce. Unlike when somebody loses someone, like if you lose somebody to death and the person has died and they've gone, you have the grieving process where you've seen them being put in the ground, they've passed on, and then you do the work of moving on with your life. You can move on, you never see them again, they're gone. But divorce isn't like that, because the person is still alive. You have the experience of having lost someone that is no longer yours, and they're no longer in your life to a large degree. You still see them. So a lot of what people try to get through in the divorce experience is getting over loving someone that much. So you still see them, they no longer want to be around you, and you have to deal with it. And so that's a lot of the hurtful experience of it. That's what it's like mostly. And when I think when I went through my divorce experience, I didn't only feel like I was losing a wife. I felt like I was losing my whole family, because of the age of my children, they went off to be with their mother. So in an instant, I wasn't with my children, I wasn't with my ex-wife, and all of a sudden that was my life. That was it. The person who, even if you know that you're going through, I mean, there's people who will tell you, they'll say, it's better to go through problems and be together than to not go through any problems and be by yourself. And I may not always agree with that kind of thing. The truth is that whatever you're going through, just knowing that you're going home to your person, um, it can become such a strong habit that when that's taken away from you, your whole mental support and emotional support structure is completely ruined. So that experience is devastating. I think I dealt with that 5 years, I think, before I could actually properly move on. It was devastating for me. It was hard because a lot of the time I spent believing that it was going to be fixed.
Mm.
My beliefs and stuff that I was reading, my own personal faith, I was like, no, this is going to work. So I stayed away from other relationships. I didn't, I always self-sabotaged in other relationships because I always believed that this one was going to work. And so it kept me from a lot. And it meant 5 years for me watching somebody else move on with their life, getting to other relationships, have a great deal of fun, um, just have a great time whilst I was going through a really difficult time in my own personal walk, and it was hard. No longer spending every day with the children, wondering how they were, are they okay? Are they being introduced to different guys? What is their mental state like? What is their emotional state like? I don't want to get married because I don't want them to think that I've forgotten about them. I don't want them to think that I've moved on. I don't want to have other children and then wonder, does our dad still love us? Because now he's got other children, now he's moved on. And a lot of that was just a constant battle. Like I said, if you can imagine really loving someone and watching somebody live their life and move on and be with other people and not care too much about you or care at all about you and miss your birthday for the first time in a long time and not
Mm.
celebrate your anniversary for the first time in a long time and not care what you see about them on social media or what you hear about them around town. None of those things matter to them. It was very hard, that experience of it. So like anybody who's been through it will know that usually what will happen is you'll have a period of separation, and then after that will come the process of divorce. So like I said, every stage of the way I was fighting it because I didn't want to participate in it. I wanted to do my best to try to get my family back, and it didn't work out that way for me, to be honest. But yeah, but I spend a lot of my time making sure that people don't get to that stage. I try my best to try to help people reconcile stuff. And like I said, to fight for their marriages while there's still time. Divorce is horrible. It's nasty. And I
Mm.
think one of the that I think we spoke about before this video in an earlier time was the process that I went through when my divorce challenged my faith in God
Yeah.
and challenged my faith personally. Like I lost my sense of identity because like you grow up, especially if you grow up in a Christian home, you grow up knowing that God is the God of impossibilities. If there's an
Mm.
impossible situation, God can come in and He can make it possible. And you grow up knowing that God hates divorce. And there was a Pharaoh one time who tried to take Sarah, what's it, Moses, not Moses, Abraham's wife Sarah, and God visited him in a dream because God didn't want this person to mess with their destiny. And God told him, if you don't return Sarah by tomorrow, I'll kill you. And you grow up knowing all of these things and experiencing all of these things. And so your faith is being tested in these periods of separation and faith. And I've spoken to both women and men who that's what they're trying to reconcile. They're trying to reconcile, hey, listen, I don't get it. I believe in a God who can do impossible things. And I'm
Mm.
praying, sowing, and I'm believing, and I'm making confessions, and I'm having meditations. And the more I do this, my partner, my wife, my husband is just going further and further away and
Mm.
engaging in other relationships. And they've initiated the divorce, and they're continuing with the divorce, and now they're concluding the divorce. And but where is God in all of this? And so that reconciliation process is very difficult for lots of people to deal with. And I know people who, when they've gotten to that stage, and God hasn't, I wouldn't say God hasn't come through, I'll say their prayers for their marriage haven't been answered in a sense, or they don't see God's answer in what they're going through. They leave the church. They leave the church, they leave their faith. They don't want to be around people who are talking about God because they don't know how, like I'm saying, in their mind and in their heart, to reconcile how God, who loves them so much, can let them go through so much pain. How God, who hates divorce, can allow them to get divorced, how God, who loves families and wants families to be together, can let their children be taken away from them. That's a very, very difficult thing for both men and women to deal with when they are approaching the aspect of divorce with their faith. Um, it was a very, very hard thing for me, and I think most oftentimes when people are speaking to me, that's the thing that they're trying to get encouragement on or direction. It's just like, I don't understand how God is doing this. How is this fair, and how is this working? And I think on that point, that has been for me, even when I do speak on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and we talk about the gospel, um, that is by far one of the biggest questions that challenge um, Christianity, is that people don't have a problem with God up until they can't reconcile while a loving, all-powerful God will allow loss and pain. Um, People are fine with God up until people die in a building, or people die in an accident, or young children are dying. Then they can't understand how God, who's all-powerful and all-loving, can let those things happen. So the real problem is the problem of pain that exists in the world, and that's fighting the gospel. And I think as we do the work that we're doing, even on this platform, and helping people understand how God deals with pain, is a lot of what will answer those questions for people, because that's, I think, where people, the biggest gripe is with the gospel, is they're fine with it up until they experience the personal loss. Someone dies, or they lose a husband, or they lose a, or they lose a family. So yeah, that aspect is real, man. I faced it myself. I was challenged. Even as a man, you just say to yourself, I'm not enough. And that's one of the things that can actually keep you from moving on, is say, even if I find somebody else, the person that I was married to previously didn't think that I was enough. So how am I going to be enough for this person? And because, like I'm saying, by the time that you're doing it for the second time, you realize that everybody, people are good at playing the romance game, like I said in the beginning. So you've had experience, and you know that, hey, listen, people can say things, they can show certain things, but a person's true character, true nature only really shows up a year or 2 years into it. And so nobody wants to go through that again. What ends up happening is that a woman, a man ends up feeling unloved and unwanted and rejected and not worthy and not enough. Nobody wants to go through that 2 times, man. It's a terrible thing to go through.
Um, I want you to talk us through. Some people say that any new relationship after divorce doesn't get better. What's your perspective on that?
I think here's the thing, is that I think doing it again, or for a second time, people approach it very differently. So when we're talking about getting into relationships after your divorce, I think there's people who have used that as an opportunity to overcome a heartbreak of their divorce. There have been people who go through those relationships we're talking about so that they can affirm their value as a woman or as a man. They'll be in a relationship, they're being told by a guy how beautiful, how sexy, how attractive they are, and it's affirming them, not necessarily that they're in it for a long-term relationship. They're using it to overcome, like I said, a hard or being emotionally challenged at the time. Those are all the wrong ways to use relationships. So I think it's how people are approaching the relationship. I would be curious to find out from people where they are in the stage of their recovery. Have they gotten over the divorce? Have they healed? Are they in a relationship now, able to receive love? That was another thing. I know one of the things that you had asked me is like trying to help people find love after divorce, or after a nasty experience like that. And most oftentimes, it's not the challenge of finding love. Because love is everywhere. It's the challenge of accepting love. I think that's where people have struggled the most. Is not finding love, because the love is there. That they have trouble receiving it again, being
Yeah.
vulnerable. That's where the real challenge is. But yeah, that's my point. It varies. Like I'm saying, because it's so individual. I don't know why the person would be getting into the relationship. Have they healed from the divorce? Have they found themselves again? Because you have to, I promise you, if a person is not doing the work of establishing their identity again, becoming secure in themselves, knowing who they are, knowing what they want, knowing, finding their goals again, finding their drive and their mojo again, their power, understanding their why. Why am I here? What am I here to do? If people lose sense of that, I, I'm saying this, and I know that people will do it anyway, but I'm saying you have no business being in a relationship, because I promise you, at some point, you're either going to damage yourself further, or you're going to damage somebody else. And some, there's a saying, and it's so true. I mean, not only because I've experienced it myself, there's a lot of people that I speak to experience it as well. But hurt people hurt people. It's what they so true. And that's why I'm saying you have to have done the work of getting over all of that internal work that you need to do. Because if you don't do, you're going to put somebody else in a situation where all you're doing is spending the time hurting them. They're constantly trying to clean up after you. They're constantly trying to put you back together. They're constantly trying to affirm you. And it's nobody's job to do that. Nobody has the job of doing that. That's stuff that you have to do internally, because the relationship is going to succeed if you've got two whole people coming into it and approaching it from the perspective of being complete. If you're coming into a relationship to be completed in the relationship, it's telling me that this relationship is not going to do very well, because you shouldn't be coming in there to be completed. You should be a complete person, giving. That's what marriage is all about. It's constantly giving. People giving to each other, not one person taking. Can become exhausting that way. So yeah, I mean, the work of recovering after divorce, it can't be understated. It's a lot of work to get to that place. Another thing that people will also say after they go through these traumatic experiences, they'll say, I'm scared to love again. Another thing that I've read, I can't get my heart broken again. That's also not a great way to experience it, because no one intends that for you. That's a self-imposed approach to relationships. It's you don't get any merits for it. You don't get any trophies or any awards for being so pious. You've got to put yourself out there. We've always had to do that. You did that before you did it before you got married the first time. You did it when you were dating in high school. You're constantly taking risks. Every time, if you start a business, you're taking a risk. If you're taking on a new job, you're taking on a risk. If you have a baby, you're taking on a risk. All of life is demanding for us to step up. And so it's not, maybe I'm speaking to the person who is, they use that as a crutch, or they use that excuse to self-sabotage relationships so that they don't move on. That's a terrible way to approach it. You have to take risks. But my point is, there's no rush in taking the risk. The work, you have to do the work on yourself. Because I'll tell you how you know that you are now over what you've been through. You will know that you're over what you've been through when the opportunity no longer represents itself as a risk. Then you're in a good place. For as long as you're seeing it as a risk to damaging your heart, you haven't done the work of being healed yet. So you're not a whole person. That's what that's telling me. You haven't been healed. You haven't gotten over what you've gone through. And you can only really approach a new relationship and give yourself fully to somebody else when you have done the work of getting over what you've been through, finding yourself again. Like I'm saying, finding your identity, and most importantly, finding your identity in Christ. Where am I in Christ? What does the Bible say about me? Who am I? What do I have to give? Why am I valuable? Why should I be loved? Why should I be respected? All of those kinds of things. And yeah, like I'm saying, that's the time. Those are the indicators that let you know. Okay, now I'm in a space where I feel like I can start letting people in to my life again.
Indeed, guys, the healing component is very, very crucial. Do not move. We always advise this to people that we support, that do not move into a new relationship if you haven't healed from the pain of the former detachment. So if you are still in pain, hurt people, like you rightly said, will always hurt other people. So don't jump into it. I know some people say that time heals the wound. The longer the time, then the more healed you become. That is a subjective issue. Some people can spend 10 years and yet
they are not
still,
healed.
yet
Yeah.
they're not healed. One of the things that we get a lot is the issue of comparison levels, that a lot of people begin to compare. Paul used to, especially sexual matters, we get to support people that say, well, John
Was more better
was
than
more better.
my husband now. And I think as well as with late or with men as well, they tend to feel that my ex was more better in this than that, and some of the styles in the bedroom, she is not
Yeah,
comfortable with
Comfortable,
this,
yeah,
and my ex was more
better than
comfortable on
that.
that.
So how do I communicate with him that he used to do it this way and I used to enjoy it? So in some cases they are now holding him accountable for the things that another former
For the former one,
relationship used.
without also making them feel they have failed, because old wounds soon bleed. So we're talking to somebody who is healing. So for me to say, look here, you're not doing it, so and so used to do it better, won't it hurt again? How do you communicate that?
I mean, here's one of the things. Again, like we're talking about, this is specifically to people who have done the work of getting themselves together again. I think let's start there. So if we're talking to somebody who's done the work, or they've made some really great strides in it, and they're at a place where they're ready to have another relationship, and like I said, they're at a place where they're ready to receive love and ready to let somebody into their life, before anything else is or even if you're in the relationship just immediately now, you need to realize it's a completely new relationship. It's completely new. It's like buying a new car. If I had a BMW and I buy a Mercedes Benz now and say, yeah, but the BMW used to do this, and the BMW used to do this. It's not helping any of the performance for the Mercedes Benz. You've got to approach it with that in mind, is that I have a completely new car. It's not a better version of the old one. It's not a worse version. It's just a different car. So, and I think a lot of people, maybe this is another thing I need to address as well, is because, one of the things that people also ask me in this regard is they'll say, one of the things that I did, even if it was subconsciously, was constantly trying to find somebody who was better than my wife, somebody who looked better, so that when my ex sees me, my ex-husband or my ex-wife, they'll be like, oh my God, I really made a mistake. I shouldn't have let this person go, because look at the person that I'm with right now. And even that in itself is completely misguided, because, here's the thing, is like, I know, again, this is another saying that goes around in Christian circles. They say that God, don't worry, let them go, because God is bringing you something much better. And God said that anyway. God doesn't say that anyway. And here's the thing: is it's not about it being better or being worse. It's about it being right for you. Um, that's where we must pay attention. So it's not like, oh no, no. And I did this in the beginning, where when I first started thinking about another relationship, I stayed away from girls, even though I had a great relationship with them. They just didn't measure up on the scale compared to my ex-wife. So I was like, my ex-wife sees me with this person, this is gonna look like a demotion, or like I'm being like, I've had lower standards. Then she's gonna say to herself, "You see, I knew it. This guy had such low standards. No wonder why he's with this woman." So in the back of my mind, I was like constantly like, no, I was trying to find somebody who, if I was just a chance caught by my ex-wife, I would be so proud. I'd be like, oh my God, this woman, look at her, she is so amazing, and this is exactly why I left you. But all of that is completely misguided stuff, and that's the idea, is that God is not in the habit of
It's so real.
because for you to say that someone else is better than someone else, is like, who of us being parents would compare our children that way, say, no, my son is better than my daughter, or this son is better than this son. That's not how God thinks. God doesn't think like that at all. But what God is, if God is answering a prayer, God is bringing you somebody who is right for you. That's what God is doing. So it's coming out of the space of thinking that someone is better or someone is worse or whatever. So that's the first thing in approaching it, and then secondly, even in bringing it up, like you're saying, like, how do I how do I introduce the things that I used to enjoy previously in a previous relationship? And I think, again, this is one of those things where you've got to know your person. It's not like a template thing. You read like a lot of these like You magazine or Cosmopolitan, and they say, 6 ways to blow your man away. There's 8 billion people on the face of the planet. Those 6 ways, they're not going to blow all of us away. You can't understand all men. That's the idea. Like, I mean, women who say, I don't understand men, or men who say, I don't understand women. That's not your responsibility to
You
do that.
don't
You
need
must
to.
your woman. Yeah, you must understand your man. You're not supposed to understand all men. You're not supposed to understand all women. You're supposed to understand yours. And so a part of that is knowing your person. This is how this person communicates. This is how they receive information. And even as you go into this new relationship that you're in right now, you can't bring somebody else into this marriage. So you can never have conversations about what someone else used to do. It can only ever be about that you particularly enjoy. And one of a general way to approach it might be to say, hey, listen, I would like us to try this. Let's just try this. Let me try this. Let me try and introduce it as a way to try out something and then see how it feels from there. Because the minute you say, I used to do this with John and oh my goodness,
Right.
like how many of those things does somebody need to keep up with? Because John used to do this and then John used to do that. And then it's like, are you looking for a replacement for John, or are you wanting to have a new relationship with somebody who really cares about you? So it can never be a comparison. There's some things that you just may need to do without, and that's another thing I suppose that people don't hear a lot of. Some of these things you may never experience them again, and that's fine.
Thank God.
It should really come down to you starting a new relationship that's founded on values that last this time. It shouldn't be the of what happened, because whatever John did, that marriage, it didn't work. So that couldn't
It
have worked
can't.
for both together. Whatever styles he did, whatever time he used to call and do the marriage still failed. So we can't reference John's activities as a success formula for this one. We have to try and be open to trying something very different in this one. So I think that would really be how to approach the issue of. I don't think there's a problem with noticing the differences, but I think the problem comes when we start comparing, like you're saying. Noticing is one thing, and that's fine because you can notice internally. You just can notice, oh, this is different. I'm not used to this. But when you start making the comparison, that's an action now. It's not involuntary. It's you deciding to decide and to choose and to compare, and that's where there's a problem.
All right. I'm seeing the comments here.
John is in trouble.
Nyari says, let John and his tricks go. And I'm seeing Michada says John did not
Did
work.
not work. Oh,
And,
let him rest in peace.
and somebody says let John go. That's the honest truth, that John failed. So it's the 80-20 rule, where you want to bring the 20% of John, and you want to magnify it to look as if that was the 80% of him. And yet the 80% is what made you not to live together. Time has, is fast spent, but we don't want to leave you, Malcolm, without telling us. Let me make it a 2-in-1. What lessons have you come out with from your former relationship, your former marriage? If we say relationship, or limited, from your former marriage. Then secondly, how have that shaped your perspective about marriage?
Yeah, and also just to highlight that Malcolm is married now. He's in a new relationship.
Oh yeah.
And so you're the best person to really tell us how you've overcome the pain, and you're now in a new relationship.
Yeah.
So how has the whole divorce process and the pain shaped your perspective of marriage now?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let me try and answer all of these together in a sequence that makes sense. But I think here's the thing that I can appreciate right now is I appreciate that there is when I got married, I don't think the age that you get married is as important as you appreciating the responsibility of marriage. If you can appreciate the responsibility of marriage and you're 20 years old, that's fantastic. But I feel like a lot of us, like I said, particularly a lot of people that I help, got into it where the foundation was romance, where the foundation wasn't love, and where we didn't appreciate the responsibility of the relationship. So I think one of the things that I learned after I stopped hurting was how much for granted I used to take my ex-wife. Now, here's the thing: is that like I appreciated that we had problems, but in my mind, I was like, it doesn't matter what happens in this relationship. We're sticking it out. We're gonna be together, and we're just gonna work things out, however long it takes. And it was very, I suppose, I took her for granted in that aspect of it. You talk about like spending time with her, appreciating who she was. A lot of these things, people use them as bullet points, but there's so much more detail that goes into how you make somebody feel appreciated. We're coming out of the age where all we used to do was to be able to buy flowers and diamond rings. It's not what holds people together. It's the sacrifices that people see you making to make it work. And where I think in my particular cases, I started.
Did I just miss you there, Malcolm? Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yes. Unfortunately, we have just
We've lost him.
Malcolm just dropped off from. Let me just try again. Oh, I can't believe this.
He was getting.
Well, we are very sorry. Malcolm just have been booted out of the system, or is the internet that just cut off? We're not so sure. But this is it. This is what we have learned from the man who went through divorce, and he is now back. One take-home point for me is divorce is not an event.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process,
Yeah.
and it hurts, and there's a lot of pain in it, there's a lot of loss in it, lawsuits and all this stuff. It's not something that you can just think overnight and say, let me get over it. I'm fed up of this marriage. If you are fed up, I would say look for someone else who can reconcile you, unless otherwise you are in a relationship where there is abuse. Other than that, I would say fight for marriage.
Indeed, guys. Tonight was a night to always remember. I treasure a lot of the points that he mentioned, especially the healing component. So if you're there, you've gone through a divorce, don't rush it. There's nothing called let me jump in and jump out, because if you rush into a new relationship when you haven't fully recovered the very same behavior patterns that you used to do, the very same things that used to occur in your marriage is likely to also happen and potentially lead you out of your marriage. So let's not neglect the healing component of it. And the key takeaway message, let John go. If there's a John out there, he's given it to you the way you wanted it. Just let them go. Their history, let them rest in peace and concentrate on the new relationship that God has brought your way. Or there he comes again.
Yeah. I was about to speak in tongues, and Malcolm, he just came back. People were now saying if you could make an audio, and I was about to say, Priscilla, call him and tell him to make an audio. Unfortunately, you are here.
Yeah, sure. I don't know where I left it, man, but I suppose I was just trying to recap
The
on the stuff
lesson.
that I learned.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose here's the thing, is that you cannot take each other for granted. You cannot take time for granted. You cannot take your partner for granted. You can't take the opportunities that you have to be there for each other for granted. And it's, like, here's the thing is that, like I said right in the beginning, one of the things that is so important is to realize the fight for your marriage is happening every single day. You're fighting so many things you're contending with in your marriage. You're contending with information, new information. You're contending with new opportunities. You're contending with just what you're going through emotionally. Like I said, how people can grow apart. There's constantly opportunities where your marriage is being challenged in so many ways. And this is without the complications that each one of you brings to the marriage. And that's why it can't be taken for granted. I think it's really to be able to approach your marriage with the view that, listen, this only works if we work it. I need to be here. I mean, one of the things we didn't get to speak about is some of the role plays in it. Like a lot of the time, like people approach marriage like it's a 50% contribution. I bring 50%, you bring 50%. But a lot of it is really how successful marriages work is somebody needs to lead it and somebody needs to be there to support it. What ended up happening in my situation when I was now being divorced is that I realized no one was leading the relationship. No one was giving it direction. No one was there. So everybody thought it was okay. Everybody thought somehow all of this will just kind of work itself out, and no one was taking responsibility for what was happening. So it was no surprise that everything came crumbling down. I wasn't the man that I needed to be at the time. And, like, I mean, here's the thing is that every time, like we didn't talk about submission, we didn't talk about all of those kinds of things, but where you have a man being a man and playing the role that he's supposed to play, I promise you, women, they've got no trouble submitting, and they've got no trouble being there to love. Usually when people are coming to me, I can oftentimes pick up what's going on in the relationship by just understanding how the man is thinking about the marriage, how he's talking about his wife, and how he's talking about the challenges that they're having. And then I can realize very quickly who's taking responsibility, who's actually leading this relationship. Women don't always necessarily want to lead. They love being led. They love somebody being in control. They love somebody stepping up. But where you see situations where women are in charge, women are leading, it's not going to a good place. But yeah, like I'm saying, it's so hard to condense all of these lessons into just a few minutes. You can't take it for granted. And I suppose that's how I started approaching my new relationship. Was I'm a lot more deliberate about this relationship. I'm here. I'm wanting to understand. I'm available. I don't always have the answers, but I'm very, very available. And I'm committed, and I'm trying, and I keep trying. And that's some of the things that like I'm saying, in the same way, you've got to be deliberate about raising your children. It's not the government's responsibility to raise your children. It's not the church's responsibility to raise your children. It's your responsibility. The Bible says if you train, or fathers train their children in the way they should go, when they grow up, they won't depart from it. It's the same thing with your marriage. Jesus doesn't come and love your wife for you. Jesus doesn't come and love your husband for you. He doesn't keep her company and take care of all of her sexual needs. You have to do it. You have to do it. If you're not doing it, it's not being.
You're
Do you know what I
preaching
mean?
good.
Yeah, it's how this works. If you don't do it, it's not being done. There's no substitute for a great husband or for a great wife. You've got to do the work of it. It's hard. Marriage is hard, and it needs commitment and dedication. But yeah, like I'm saying, it's just so much to talk about, man. About it.
Wow. This is getting deeper. My babam kurum chada bunzobaya. He's saying, I'm looking for my journey. We are not looking for any journey right now. Journey is gone.
Right. You know what, Malcolm, you have it's a thought-provoking session that we had tonight, and I believe those who are married, those who are searching or who are in a relationship about to get married, and those who are in the process of probably filing for a divorce, they have learned something from what you have told us. And the honest truth is, some of these things we do not know much about them, so we think it's always easy. And whenever we have an argument, it's all about, if you want to live, live. If you want,
Threaten each other
we
with
threaten with
divorce.
divorce, not knowing that it's it's more bigger than what we think or what you perceive it to be. And one thing which you also have taught me to do is to appreciate the person who is with me. Because we've been married for 12 years, and sometimes you look at her and just you think, oh, it's just the same old. What else do I need to appreciate? But there's this statement which says you'll never know how valuable something is unless you lose it. So this is what they have brought to us.
Yeah, sure.
And without letting you go tonight, we would want you to give us either
homework.
Yeah, we want the homework. We don't want tips now. We have given us enough tips. Can you give us homework for tonight?
Here's one of the things that I think, here's a really great exercise. I think, a lot of the stuff, like I said, one of the things I'd really love to help couples with is get rid of the unmet expectations. Something that is crippling a lot of marriages is because expectations are not being met, but the expectations are not being met not always because it can't be met. Sometimes it's because it's not being communicated. I think what a really great exercise is for everybody. I'm not saying necessarily that people need to do it together in a couple. I think individually, a wife just needs to sit down and say, I thought I put this across clearly, but I didn't, and maybe I didn't put it across well because I didn't know exactly what I wanted or how to articulate it. So my exercise would be just to leave people with, get back to the things that you really like. A lot of people, when they envision themselves being married, they didn't envision what they're going through right now. They thought it was going to be something else. They thought they were going to come home and she was going to be standing by the door and saying, hey, big boy. And she thinks that he was going to come through with this thing or be surprising her with vacations and whatever. But it hasn't been communicated. And I think a lot of that, it's a great exercise for people just to sit down for a couple of days and say, hey, listen, what did I really, really want? What was the thing that really makes me feel married, or would really make me feel married if it started happening, or would really make me feel loved and appreciated if it started happening? And it may not be a long list. It doesn't need to be a long list, but it needs to be something that you know very clearly. It's very clear to you, and you're able to say to your partner, hey, remember when I was telling you about this? This is what I meant. This is what's been happening. But this is really what I would like us to try. Can we try it doing it like this? Let's say you come home, or could we try you just checking up on me throughout the day? Maybe check on me twice. That's what I envisioned I would be experiencing right now. And I think the point of exercise is to really close the gap of unmet expectations. I think let's do the exercise of communicating what those expectations are again, so that we don't have the situation, like I said in the beginning, where you think that you're both talking about sex, but one person is talking about oral sex, one person is talking about what is that, Kama Sutra type stuff. And so the thing is, let's get on the same page about what these expectations are, and be clear about it. And don't let it be brushed aside. Don't let it be swept under the carpet. Don't let it be dismissed. Talk about it so that it's clear. This is what makes me feel excited. There's a lot of women who are not looking forward to having sex because their husbands are not approaching sex the way that that turns them on. But that's a simple conversation that needs to be had. When you become clear about what it is that you want, there's a lot of guys who are they're not having the fun that they want to have with their wives because, again, it's not an expectation that they're communicating properly. So they'd rather go out and hang with Susie at the bar, or hang with Susie from the office, instead of addressing it. Address it. If you're going to argue about it, then argue about it, but put it out there. My point is, people are not meeting expectations because they don't even know what the expectations are. So I think let's work on closing that gap, write them out, make them clear, have a discussion about them, and then let's just do the work of closing the gap of those unmet expectations. It'll make people a lot happier, more fulfilled, more excited to go home, more excited to try new things when we understand what the expectations are and when we understand how we can meet them, so that we forget about John and we start introducing our own style, which is even more exciting.
That's right. Let's go and have the naked conversations, Kama Sutra styles, whatever that you want to communicate as your expectations. Obviously, we've highlighted to get Joni out of the conversation. So we are not talking about what Joni did, but we're talking about what I expected from get-go.
That's true. And as further together, I know there are some people who say it's quite hard for us to have a conversation. And I think by now you're aware that some of our packages include those of how to open up or how to start a conversation with your spouse. Among others, also apart from the power sessions that we have, it's one of the things that we have always advocated for, and we always say we can help and work with you to do that, trying to open conversations.
That's right, guys. So don't die in silence. I like what Malcolm said earlier on, that sometimes we wait until it's too late. And at that time, it is just too difficult to resuscitate something that's already dead. So don't wait until it gets sour. There is help available. There are resources out there. There are a lot of couples that can support. Do get in touch with us if you need to. Malcolm is also available. If you're at the brink of divorce and you feel like I can't do this anymore, do get in touch with us. We can support you as best as we can.
What more shall we say apart from saying thank you so much for giving us your precious possession, which is your time, and we hope you now have written down the homework. You are going to implement it. Priscilla and I are also ready to execute, communicate, have a dialogue of what is it that I'm expecting now, and also remembering that these things, they do change as we age, as we
we grow, as the bonds
as the bones become a little bit stronger. Shall I also appreciate those who normally come first and share? Please, for those who are on the platform right now, kindly share with others. They might not have the opportunity to have watched it live, but they can also watch it on a replay. God permitting, time willing, we'll be back again next week with another guest. For me and my beautiful wife Priscilla, we're signing out till we meet again. God bless you.
Guys.